And we're go. So, whenever Mufflet's ready.
Yes, there it is. Go ahead.
Okay, so before we reach our next cutoff point, we were talking about conceptual art, which is such a buzzword. I want you to go back and talk a little bit more about how you frame that argument and carry on.
Okay. I think I can only speak for myself in this regard, but for me the concept is very important, and of course it has to be tied to my emotions and my passion, the commitment to certain subject matter, but I need like a strong concept, and that does sort of tie in often to what you might think of as academic pursuits. For example, I was about to tell you about my new project, which has to do with Homer's Odyssey.
Right.
And it started out with thinking of a way to think about where we are as a society. And I finally came up with the thought that people are pretty much lost everywhere around the world. People don't really have, strong sort of social projects that were of connectivity like we used to have. So people are kind of floating around lost. So I thought, well, being lost, that sounds like the Odyssey, right? And I first did a piece about Penelope, the woman that's actually not lost, but she's knitting and unknitting or weaving and unweaving this tapestry. And I could see that, I could apply that to the computer programming project that I've been working on, and I'll show you some of that later if you like. And then I thought, well, let's take it further and now start to look at the hero, the poetic hero, and his relationship to travel and to challenge and all that. So I've been working on images of heroic characters, but sort of integrated into what I call a palimpsest, again, figured ground interconnectivity or intertextuality, if you will. And that led to me writing a paper about Nietzsche and his relationship to Dionysian and Apollinarian culture, although the Dionysian sort of superimposed upon the Apollinarian, and that's what this project is trying to tie into. And I gave a paper at the New School of Social Research about this, called Aesthetic Frenzy, Nietzsche's Aesthetic and Aesthetic Frenzy. So that's kind of like where I'm going at the moment. So kind of reaching back, looking at classical culture,
Right.
which could be interpreted as academic, and then trying to do something that's relevant to the society now, that has emotional connectivity to me, so I hope to other people, sort of a simple,
Well, but thinking about the Homer's Odyssey and that sort of iconic classical text, here we are sitting in Paris, and it seems to me that do you regard yourself in a biographical sense as sort of you're American living in Paris, which of course has lots of romantic connotations. But it is all about what we read into it rather than what we resist. But
That's right.
do you find as an expat, can you talk about your experience and how you might look at global culture through maybe a slightly different lens than what
Yeah,
what's going on?
absolutely. I mean, for me, and again, when I used to think about Europe, it was as sort of the subject matter of academic interest, right?
Yeah.
Philosophy, history, architecture, it all had to do with the history of Europe. Now I'm living in Europe, I'm going to cities like Amsterdam, Torino, places, and I'm seeing what it's really like, going to their archaeological museums, going to their contemporary art museums. So in a way, I'm kind of living out an educational program, if you will, sort of unsystematically. And so I don't really consider myself an expat because I was never really a pat to begin with. But and I don't like these categories. But I know what you're saying.
And you're known for not liking categories. I think there was an interview once where I read that you were pretty dismissive of the interviewer's attempt to categorize you in the first place, so we won't go there.
It's a convention, it's a way we talk about, let's just not get lazy in our thinking and let's, constantly challenge the assumptions.
I'll give you a good example, and you brought it up when we had the camera shut down, but, you had the opportunity to see the work of Moussel, and talk about that.
Raymond Roussel, yes. Raymond Roussel is a wonderful, eccentric, very little known, especially in the English-speaking world, writer from the fin de siècle period, the late 19th century, kind of in that dandy, late symbolist era, but the beginning of modernism. And he wrote 3 books. Probably the most important and the better known is called Impressions of Africa. And this was written in a very eccentric manner. He used really weird, machinic-like rules that he applied to his grammar and the words he chose. And the important part is that he then made the book was not popular. It was very difficult for people to understand what he was trying to say. But then he made a theater piece out of it. And this is the very important part about it. Francis Picabia, Marcel Duchamp, Apollinaire, and Picabia's wife went to see the play. And everyone else in the audience hated it and they were booing, but they thought it was so funny and so eccentric and so futuristic in its use of machines and they just thought it was very modern. And Duchamp sort of took his whole inspiration for the large glass from this. You have a bachelor machine, you have the Virgin and all these kind of word plays and sort of sex machine ideas and stuff. All of that comes out of Raymond Roussel. And so you just never know where ideas are going to generate from.
Right, and that corporality that Roussel was tacking on to his sort of vision of a machine age future is something that we've talked about here in the room as being very much part and parcel of what you're working with as well.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So, in sort of in closing, the Odyssey is the current project.
Yes.
Venice Biennale is coming up.
Yes.
Do you have I've been sort of looking at this beautiful little Moleskine book laying here with the sort of rough notes. Are there some comments and some sort of insights that I'm missing, some things that you might want to add as we wrap up here?
Nothing really specific. I mean, that notebook is full of ideas for the new book I'm trying to write. I've written maybe the first chapter of it, but what I'm trying to do is build on immersion into noise, because immersion into noise pretty much stops with today. And so I'm trying to see how noise might be theorized in the future. And that's, of course, harder to do than looking through the past and finding examples and knitting them together in a coherent narrative. So it's just kind of the beginnings of what I hope will become the next book. And I did use a lot of those in the piece I wrote about Nietzsche and aesthetic frenzy and how noise relates to this figure ground problem and my general theoretical concerns with philosophy and art and technology and interconnecting.
This has been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
I want to thank you, on behalf of Cutter Strebe and First Junkies for making your time available to us and giving us a short list of the things that we need to be reading: the immersion into noise, the towards an immersive intelligence, and we need to be making sure that we book our flight to Venice. So we can see
Venice. You can check my blog once in a while for short papers.
Could you mention the blog site so we have that?
It's just WordPress and my name, Joseph Nechvatal. I also have another blog at thing.net, which has been a long-term artist collaboration of artists working with the internet from New York. Also,
that's a great project. If you just want to talk just very briefly about thing.net, because that's a
absolutely. It was one of the earliest were called bulletin boards at the time, which were even before chat rooms. It was sort of the predecessor of chat rooms, and it was specifically set up as an artist project by Wolfgang Stahl, and he invited other artists, and it was kind of a collaborative project to, again, start seeing what is this thing, the internet, how can artists work in it, or how can we exchange information. And so it was just very, very early. Peter Halley did an early print-on-demand print experiment on it. This is 1993, around then, so very early, pioneering kind of work. And it's still in existence today, and there's a blog and a website and some.
Yeah, it's certainly worth checking out for a new generation.
Yeah.
Oh,
For the young generation, I also would point them towards YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. They can look at a lot of short animations that use the computer virus, and I match it with some of the noise music I've been making, and so there's a whole bevy of short films.
yeah, and that's a great site too. I mean, it's fantastic to be able to sort through everything, and we'll be uploading this in the dangerously raw form. Very good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, my pleasure. Thank you. Bye, everyone.